Welcome to the SoulFull Sessions Live. We're sorry for the technical glitch this morning. If you had received the emails, all the social media posting, we had a link and then there was a technical glitch in inviting Dr. Tanis. And so we fixed it. We hope that you find us. And if not, we hope you're watching the recording right now. So, welcome to the SoulFull Sessions Live. My name is Jenni Maki, and I'm thrilled and honored that you're spending time with us today, especially if you were up this morning at 5 a.m. Pacific time, 8 a.m. Eastern, watching that unbelievable hockey game. So I want to introduce Dr. Tanis. I'm absolutely thrilled to have her here. She is a phenomenal light and a beautiful power to be reckoned with in the healthcare world. She is a founder of Glow Life and a former child and adolescent psychiatrist whose work has long been centered on human development and well-being. Tanis brings together deep clinical experience, holistic health leadership, and community-centered entrepreneurship through her philosophy of grow, glow, and give. Through Glow Life and through her work as an independent consultant with Arbonne International, she integrates mindset, plant-based nutrition, skincare, emotional resilience, and values-based entrepreneurship into a cohesive vision of flourishing. Her life's work reflects a commitment to helping individuals align daily habits with deeper values, personally, relationally, and collectively. Exactly what we've been talking about all this last month on values on the SoulFull Sessions. Tanis and I have worked together for about the last year, and it has been an absolute pleasure, Tanis, to watch you as you develop your ideas foundationally and you grow into this whole new offering system, building on all the incredible experience that you have and inspiring us every single day. So I'll pass the floor to you to just welcome you, my friend.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your mentorship and coaching over the past year. It's an honor to be a guest. And yes, we were up. Well, we were watching from 5:15, so so I feel really that the plus side is that I feel really wide awake and ready to go this morning. And thank you for that beautiful introduction. The way you have pulled together.
Oh.
A lot of different threads and woven them together actually makes me, I think, understand myself better. So thank you for that.
I love that. So today we're actually bringing everything that we've been doing for the last month together. So it was a perfect fit for Dr. Tanis to join us today because all month long, we've been talking about core values and what they mean to us from a global and systemic perspective, from an interpersonal and relationships perspective, and then how that plays out personally and how we listen and develop and design those core values and then how we share them out into the world. And Tanis, you and I, even when we first started, this is actually kind of a foundation of the coaching program that you and I have worked with together. And you've done this in a lot of your work. And so today we're talking about how those values actually, what they mean and how Tanis has played into those throughout the course of her career. And so Tanis, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your psychiatric background, what took you into studying medicine, because I know you have stories to tell us about music as well and how that led into psychiatry and working with children and adolescents, and then how that transformed into you working with a healthcare company such as Arbonne, and what that thread has been and why you're working in this holistic world now and how it's grown into your Glow Life. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about your foundation and the thread and the history of where you've been and where you're moving into now.
Okay, well, bird's eye view. Let me see. Going way back, thinking back, wow, to that decision to go into medicine. I was actually someone, yes, who was fully so immersed in music during my high school years, and actually had seen myself going into something to do with languages, and so it was actually a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
In a grade 12 biology class, halfway through the year, I was not headed towards sciences, and had this moment where I understood that medicine somehow there was a connection for me that medicine was not just about uh, treating colds and broken legs, but that there was an understanding of what was going on inside of the body. And so really, to tell you the truth, it came out of a curiosity and a
Wow.
desire to know more, to understand more. And
Yeah.
and I'd always loved, I mean, I did align as well with, I had always had a love of helping people. So that was how I headed into medicine. And I actually found myself initially in a family medicine residency. And then
Okay.
during a maternity leave, I um, was doing some reading and pivoting and just thought that didn't see myself at that time so much as a generalist, but
Okay.
found myself wanting to specialize. And it was psychiatry seemed to pull together at that time some interests I had in grief, in death and dying, in development,
Mm.
and mental health, of course. And so I made a shift after my maternity leave into psychiatry. And then just as so many things that happen in life, it was actually a mentorship by
Okay.
my child psychiatry rotation and encouragement to consider that specialty that took me into child and adolescent psychiatry. And at that time in Canada, this is quite a few years ago, there was only one child psychiatry program in all of Canada. And most of
Okay.
Canada, you would
Wow.
just do that. I actually had arranged, I did all my child psychiatry training within my residency. Um,
Okay.
but but in the city of Philadelphia, there were actually 3 child and adolescent psychiatry fellowship programs. And I took the opportunity to interview there and to
Okay.
choose between those programs and made a big move to get more specialty training.
Okay.
And so that was
So
my
that's
path.
how you ending up in Philadelphia for a number of years because that's where you
Yes.
trained for psychiatry. Okay. And then how long were
I
you
did
in your
my
practice?
specialty training. Yeah. And so
Okay.
I thought I was there for 2 years. I ended up falling in love. And as many of us do, when our kids have made good friends, are in good schools, a good neighborhood, I stayed actually for 23 years.
Wow. I didn't realize
And
that.
yeah, I practiced in residential treatment and also in inner city Philadelphia. And at that time, so the little the pivot here is that although I loved what I did,
Yeah.
it was very intense.
Mhm.
And at the time I didn't know the term for this, but I probably bumped into compassion fatigue, which
Okay.
is and
Mhm.
then went on, and what I was experiencing was that I was helping other people's children, but getting home with very little left over for my own. And in fact, I
Yeah.
was homesick for my own kids. So,
Yeah. And
so
then
I
so
ended
you
up making a
developed.
pivot
Yeah.
uh, into entrepreneurship, wellnesspreneurship, a brand partnership with Arbonne, and that was a first dive into. I can explain more a little later, but that was the first dive, really, perhaps ironically, into personal growth and development.
Yeah.
And
And then so Glow Life has kind of grown out of that because just the top line view, because we are going to dive in so much more in in the time ahead. But so Glow Life kind of grew out of that. And then your tagline is grow, glow, give, right? So how did that so child psychiatry, then you move into Arbonne. How did that kind of develop? How did Glow Life kind of spark from that? And maybe tell people a little bit about just the foundation of what Glow Life is and what that means. And welcome all
sure.
those that are joining us new. Welcome. I'm Jennifer Maki. This is Dr. Tanis Gaitens, and we're just thrilled to have you with us today. And thank you for following the thread of the link to get to us live. We really appreciate it with the technical elements. So yeah, dive in, Tanis, and tell us a
I'm
little bit
in. So
more.
Glow Life, there's a path. At the time, my oldest daughter had started a personal branding business and was using me as a guinea pig, and did an interview with me, and then came
Okay.
up with a brand, and her brand was Glow. And at that time, and that was based on gratitude and growth. For GL, was this is original one: live,
Yeah.
love, and laugh. And this was her summary of me. O was for ocean, and W was for writing. And so she gave that brand to me. And at that time, I
How old was
didn't know
she?
anything about
How old was
branding.
she when she did that?
She would have been in her like her late 20s.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
and
launching into that world.
yeah, and that was a gift that she gave to me, and I kinda tucked it aside and folded it up and put it in my planner. And, and then came back to that and pulled it out later, and so it was quite a few years later that it started to, that I searched back when I was looking for branding in the sense of guiding the work that I was doing in my own life and in my business. And I turned back to that, and yes, growth. So growth, grow. I'm a huge believer in a growth mindset and in living in our growth zone. Glow in breaking that down. I've changed that slightly, but helping like to glow, to live a life that glows, to have a ripple effect of glow in the world. And that's what so glow life is really to glow your own, to have a glow life, but also a verb of glow life.
Yeah. Grow and glow, and we love it.
And then,
And so you and I have worked together in this last little bit. So those of you that are checking out Dr. Tanis for the first time, you've got a lovely new logo, you've got some new materials that you're putting out there. So there's lots of different places where people can find you that we're going to talk about later, but it's a constant evolution process, isn't it? In not only our own values, but in how we present in the world and how we engage with the world. So it's that constant evolution that's what's been such a privilege in this last year with you and I, is just, I love and so appreciate how you're constantly growing, like starting off, in music and then languages and then psychiatry and working with children and adolescents. And then you're constantly choosing and evolving with your values and aligning your life with that, which is exactly what we've been talking about and also encouraging for this last month with people. And in my own work, working in the healthcare industry, working with doctors and nurses through Calgary Health Region and Alberta Health Services and facilitating workshops on this values action alignment, you're the living embodiment of that. And I just love that we get to work
oh,
together and
wow.
play together. So that's really lovely. So we're going to dive in now to kind of the top line. So we're going to, in this last month, our first week focused on global values, systemic values. And actually it was kicked off by Mark Carney's speech, and where he talked about values, and that, when he talked about for that 13-minute speech that kind of realigned the world and said, the middle way, the middle people in this scenario, this middle class or these middle governments, we can pull together and we can actually have more of an impact when we lead from values first. And so it was ironic because we had picked the theme of values, and then Mark Carney gave his speech, and it kind of flowed right into us launching off from this global and systemic shift that we're seeing, where people are becoming more aware of how important values are. And I think, in that talk, we actually showed where it was working well in different governments, who was doing it well for homelessness, for healthcare, for environmental issues. And so our world, I think, has been focused in different professions on bringing values to the forefront and focusing on where they can make change. But now it's becoming more and more of a global conversation because of the challenges that we're facing, particularly in North America, and what that is bringing to light in our society. So maybe we can talk a little bit, Dr. Tanis, about what this means from a healthcare system, because you were privy to a healthcare industry, right? So coming from that medical background and now moving into more holistic health and wellness. So maybe talk a little bit about the gaps that you maybe saw in the system, as much as you honored that system, but what the gaps were in that system and what made you kind of shift to be able to provide your support from that holistic emotional well-being, mental well-being, and health and whole products. So maybe talk a little bit about that if you can.
Sure. Yes. Well, I love this. This conversation is because the values lens. Although values obviously have been guiding me to look at it in that way, it's a newer lens to me, and I love where we have different perspectives coming
Yeah.
together and looking at things in new ways.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of that speech, and I think that that in terms of valuing, you know, w our healthcare system is still primarily, um, set up to reward treatment of illness,
Yes.
as opposed to rewarding, prevention
Yeah.
and teaching practices that will create wellness. So, that's, and I think anytime that's a whole nother conversation, but how
It is, and we did touch on it, like in the so
yes.
those that are watching, You can go back and listen to the recordings on my YouTube channel. But we did talk a little bit about that from the perspective of when I started doing workshops 3 years ago. And I was brought on as I don't really know whether people are going to want that personal support as opposed to just the professional development. And then it ended up being the course that I facilitated I ran it for 3.5 years. It was a foundational piece because you were taking into account the personal values of the individuals there, and you were talking about the mind-body connection. So if we are healthy in mind, if we are taking care of our bodies, we actually do have that role to play in our own health, and that connection between dis-ease leading to disease. And our healthcare system way back when they would never shake their heads and say, no, that's not true, that when you have dis-ease, it can often manifest as disease. But now they're looking at preventative measures, healthcare measures that actually people do have a role to play in their healthcare. So yeah, I'm sure you've seen such a change in that being a medical professional.
Yes, yes, absolutely huge. And I think that, first of all, and I want to say that I really admire the physicians that are still working in the healthcare systems because they are so needed. Our own family doctor. If you're not in Canada, you don't know that when you have a family doctor, that's an actually amazing thing.
Gold.
And so, shout out to everyone who is managing and providing healthcare services within the system. And I think one of the things that attracted me initially about becoming a brand partner with Arbonne was the holistic view of health, healthy living inside and out. And nowadays, we also understand so much more about gut health being a key connector between our physical health, our mental health, our skin, and beyond. So I've learned so much more about that. But I think,
Tanis, maybe share a little bit, because I don't know that everyone is familiar with Arbonne. So maybe can you talk a little bit about the company of Arbonne, and what they represent and what they serve and the products they have? Because I don't know that everybody knows what Arbonne International is. So maybe share a little bit about that.
sure, I'd be happy to do that. Yeah. So Arbonne is a health and wellness company, clean and green, really the original clean and green before those were even terms 46 years ago. Began making vegan, cruelty-free skincare and eventually nutrition, and with an ingredient policy that was aligned with the European Union standards, which are so much stricter than North American standards, and always about healthy living inside and out, and how what we put on our skin affects our goes all through our bodies, bypasses the liver actually, and what we put inside affects everything. So so really it's clean, green, vegan, gluten-free nutrition and skincare and body care and so much more. So being aware of, it's also a B Corp, which is something that
we talked about those during our global. We talked about those companies.
Aware.
So yes.
Yeah. So it's the number one scoring, with the top scoring B Corp in direct sales, and one of the top globally in health and beauty categories. And that means a lot of transparency, commitment to sustainability, so that attracted me initially was the safety of the products, and then of course being married with the clinical results, and which I thought was a powerful
the science
combination.
background, I'm sure, was important.
Yeah, and because that is the other thing too, is that there's so much science and there's so much to health. Circling back to your question around maybe like more systemically, but one of the things that also happened for me was that at a time after I had already begun my business with Arbonne, and really, really enjoyed helping people with their health, with their skin, and achieved success already in that arena. When I went through a very stressful personal period, which is actually my own divorce, at that time, I was looking for something to help me, and I was a little bit, I was quite surprised by that I didn't have at that moment as much resilience as I'd been expecting from my previous experiences of myself. I read a book by Dr. Amit Sud, which is called Guide to Stress-Free Living, and he at the time was the head of integrative medicine at the Mayo Clinic,
Oh,
and I'd heard him speak, and it's a boring name for a fantastic book that has has within it um, 7 values to practice on each on one day of the week, and
beautiful.
through
I'll
that,
definitely be reading that book. That's
yeah,
great.
and also a lot about the biology of stress
Huh.
hormones, how they affect us,
Yeah,
and right around that time was actually when we were first also becoming aware of neuroplasticity. Which back
absolutely. Yeah.
when I was in my psychiatry training, we were taught that wasn't a thing. We were taught that
No,
the
I'm sure.
brain was by the time your front prefrontal cortex was finished myelinating when you're around 26, your brain was pretty much a fixed thing, right?
Yeah,
And so neuroplasticity, even though there's
beautiful.
studies back to the 1800s that show that it was there, it hasn't become, it's really like
No.
the last 10 to 12 years that we've become aware of that.
It
So,
really is fascinating. I'll say that when I was doing a talk actually for Alberta Health Services, I was their keynote speaker for one of their national conference, their provincial conference. I was actually talking about Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn. So she did all of her work in telomeres and the connection to meditation and how that can affect your brain. There's so much. And she was embarrassed for years and actually kind of hid behind the scenes doing that research because it was seen as something kind of woo woo and out there. And now talking about neuroplasticity and telomeres and the power of meditation, I've been talking in the last few weeks about how I was kind of going on gut instinct and traditional, that philosophical or that yoga meditation or this kind of that gut instinct about those things. And now the science is catching up. So that's phenomenal. Anyway, I just thought I
yeah.
would add that because it's just
Yeah.
so many
Well,
levels of development
and that, I
connectivity.
think it's probably 15 or 20 years ago that I got interested in telomeres and in
Yeah.
keeping those ends to and keeping those caps long and started
Yes.
to guide what I was doing around, I want to keep my telomeres long, and
Absolutely.
which is associated not only with longevity, but with what I call not just increased lifespan, but increased
Yep.
health span. And that's been my passion
Beautiful.
with Arbonne, but also my passion with Glow Life is to help people to not just increase lifespan, but to increase health span and joy span. Um,
We don't just want to live longer, we want to live vibrantly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Beautiful.
to function well for ourselves and for others,
Yeah.
and
So
that's
it
the
has
give part.
evolved. Maybe talk a little bit about your work now and moving into the different evolution in our, in how we evolve in our businesses. I know I'm going through menopause. You've gone through it. So talk maybe a little bit about that because this is becoming this topic. And again, I mean, you were just saying, now there's a new launch in the healthcare industry where you can actually get coverage for your, replacement hormone therapy. So again, we're evolving, but you're coming at menopause, particularly as one of the streams that you offer support in from a kind of that holistic perspective. Maybe talk a little bit about that because I know that's a big part now and you're evolving in that with Glow Life as well too.
Yeah, well, it's such an important topic, Jennifer, and I think, and that's been really over the last year, I've tried to educate myself more on this, partly triggered by the fact that our Bond and Koi brand partner with did launch a supplement, which has 3 Korean root extracts, which have been
Okay.
used for centuries to help with menopause and have been
Yeah.
clinically studied to be safe. And so I started to educate myself more, and I think maybe like there a lot of people are becoming more, but many women really view menopause as I have hot flashes, I don't have hot flashes, I've got night sweats, made it through that, and, that was it, and if you didn't have many of that, you thought that really the effects are over. But
So
my
much
my
deeper
thinking
than
has
that.
really shifted
Mhm.
because once I started to research,
Uh-huh.
first of all, where there are, estrogen receptors in our body, which in a woman's body is on every cell. So your brain is covered in
Yeah.
estrogen receptors. 70% of women that with 70% of people with dementia are women. Your blood vessels, your muscles, every part of you is covered in estrogen receptors. And when we think back to the fact that, not too long ago, a woman's lifespan pretty much was finishing at the part that she was entering menopause, but now we could be living half of our lives in a hormone deficient state. And I really recommend the book, Live. it's called Full Bloom by
Oh,
Victoria Mondlak, MD. She does a fantastic review of the studies because there were some 1990 studies
beautiful.
that were alarming. But there's a really great overview of the studies there. And I think that so many other symptoms in terms of cognition, of
Mhm.
fatigue, sleep is such a huge one.
Oh, yeah.
That and I know for myself, after I just started taking this mental support supplement in a week, I slept well for the first time in 10 years. Like, it was a
Wow.
transformation, and then that transforms your days, and, so just a little
Absolutely.
bit there, but I think
That's
that
so good.
there's so
Thank goodness
much.
it's evolving and changing, and there is more, there's a doctor that I follow, and I know I've mentioned to you Dr. Michael Greger, about because Todd and I and our family have been whole grain and plant-based for about, we're probably about 90% there. Every once in a while we have our treats. But we've been doing that for about 15 years now. And Dr. Michael Greger talks about that. I love that there's science now because his nutritionfacts.org is free, and you can go in and you can type in the symptoms that you're feeling and experiencing, and then you can understand the foods that you can put into your own body, and that, if you're willing to put in the work and the efforts to eat the right foods and do the right things, then you can have this vibrant life. But I love that there's products now like Arbonne, and there's research now done about the foods that we can eat, and there really is so much information now about
There's
putting this
there's so
value in
much
health.
more, but there's a lag, I think, there's a lag in medicine, with,
Yeah.
especially family physicians being aware. They might, there's increased protein requirements, increased fiber requirements. There's a lot that if you know, you can then work with it.
Absolutely.
But there is that key. I did see that announcement that in BC, as of March 1st, which is not too far away, that
No,
there is a shift coming where, because yeah, there's a shift coming in terms of healthcare coverage. We're looking at menopause issues, and
absolutely.
that's a positive
Right, absolutely.
change.
And I think too is that we have to take a very active role, having seen, I'm not a doctor, but I was trained in hospice training, and I saw, I worked with families as a hospice volunteer when I was in California at Scripps Memorial, and then I saw both my parents through end of life, and I really helped them through not that just their health, but then they're moving on to the other side. And you really have to be an advocate. Like, I don't know what would have happened for both of my parents had I not been an advocate for their health, not just layering on another drug, but what can you do at home with supplements, with, good eating, with making sure you're walking. My dad swam 6 days a week, had Parkinson's, and had very little symptoms because he was so active in his own health. So I think from this systemic perspective, it's wonderful that everything is evolving and that there's more information and there's more science, but it really is up to us, which now flows into our next level of values and alignment, is how we are with one another, helping one another as a community, supporting, encouraging in this healthy mindset and this vibrant living, and being our own advocate, and then moving into the personal, that we align our personal values and our actions with what we're doing to keep ourselves healthy and vibrant. So with that, I'd love to shift into your shift from psychiatry into Arbonne, as that product provider and that support for you, and the products that support your whole philosophy for Glow Life and Grow and Glow and Give. It really stemmed from your focus on values in the family. I know that because I'm privy to your story, but I would love for you to share why you made that transition at a deeper level for your children, for your family. Why? Because I know that was similar to my story too, and why I chose to go into entrepreneurship. So maybe share a little bit about that, Tanis, because I know people would love to hear that.
Sure. Yes, it was a surprise to me to find myself an entrepreneur at
Yep.
almost 40, and because I
Mhm.
hadn't viewed myself that way. But what it really was, um, as these things often are, it was the birth, significant event. So, birth of my third daughter, and then realizing I was supposed to go back to work when she was 12 weeks old, and and I was living in the U.S., and that's a generous maternity leave, but in Canada it's not. That's really short, and so I started to think about all of the I really, really loved motherhood, and it was painful to me when I had to go back to work. I had two daughters that were born towards the end of medical school and then during my family medicine residency, and it was really painful to leave them. And I just loved. Not everyone does, but I loved all the little moments, the little days, and I thought I was going to be okay with going back to work full time because I wasn't on call anymore. But after she was born, I started to think ahead and not to be, and I don't, some people might think of this to be as a little bit dark or macabre, but I've often used this to fast forward to my deathbed and think about what will I regret and what will be
Yeah.
important to me. It puts
Yeah.
things into perspective. And I realized that I would really regret missing out on all those milestones. And also, the more that I had learned about the importance of the early years in terms of attachment, bonding, I had read Paul Tuff a book called, I put it next to me so I wouldn't forget the name, How Children Succeed. It's
Okay.
about it's about
Yeah.
one of the first books that talked about ACE scores. So I really felt called to be able to be at home at least part-time in that way. And
Yeah.
so as I was thinking about what can I do part-time, I've done 14 years of post-secondary already, and I wanted to make a change quickly. And that's when I looked at this brand that I had fallen in love with personally for my family,
Yeah.
and that there was an income opportunity attached that I hadn't looked at, and then looked at was this something that I could do? And that was scary to me because I had not been in retail. Um,
Yes.
Actually, I always say that, and then I remember that in grade 12 I worked at Oscarson's Bakery in North Vancouver. I was
So a
no
little
good at
bit,
it
not
because
healthcare products, but yeah, maybe a little
I
easier
would
sell.
talk obese people out of buying a second cake. I got fired for doing that.
Yeah, that's
So
not the way sales
So
work,
talk
Tanis.
about values, action alignment. That job was not aligned with my values because
No.
I was more concerned about their health than the bottom line of the sales of the bakery. So this was much more
Right.
aligned in
Yes.
terms of helping people with their health. And
Yeah.
I had begun to think as well about the compound effect, of um, that we're all more aware of it when it comes to our finances and investments and taking
Yeah.
up that opportunity, but that the compound effect of anything that we do consistently, especially daily,
Yeah.
that has a compound effect, um, and that can happen with your children, the time that you spend with them, the time that you can invest in
Yeah.
relationships, but also even if there are toxins in your products that you're using every day or not,
Absolutely.
the compound effects to health. And then I began to be passionate about other kinds of things that we can do
Yeah.
daily that are so simple, which we could talk about
Abs-
more
Yeah,
on a
we
daily
will. We're going to
basis.
dive more into that.
But initially, so
Yeah.
that's what led me to take
Yeah.
a huge leap outside my comfort zone
Yeah.
to do this entrepreneurship thing, and
Yeah.
really not sure whether I would be successful or not. I was actually really surprised to have significant success quickly, but also
Yeah.
surprised how much I loved it. And then also, it was initially a financial decision for myself and about my wanting to be with my family more and to really
Absolutely.
be a present parent. But I began to discover that as I mentored others in their businesses, how much I loved that mentorship and coaching role and to be a part of creating transformation. I call myself a transformation junkie. So
Yeah.
I love transformation in my books, in my movies. I have, no matter how well written the book is, if there's
Yeah.
not some little bit of transformation, I'm disappointed at the end of it. And and so to be a part of that for others with their
Yeah.
health, with me creating lives that they truly want to live,
Yeah.
has been a privilege.
I find it, I love what you do, Tanis. And it's funny because you and I have been working together for almost a year now, and I'm constantly learning something new about you. So this interview is even eye-opening about more of the connections there are between us. So it's interesting. I find it very unique, particularly coming from the background you did, that you really did jump right outside your comfort zone to honor your values. And when you said about thinking, if you only had 6 months, what would you are on your deathbed? For me, it's and I've talked a lot about this in the talks that I've done before in this last month, because it brought it up again and again about why you value what you do. But for me, having lost 6 friends between the age of 16 and 26, and understanding that life is very fleeting and it's a gift every single day, and none of us know how long we have, that I lived my life in that way as well too, that, if what I'm doing right now, if I were gone in 6 months is what I'm doing right now, what I'd be doing if that were true? And if not, then I get busy doing whatever I'm going to do to transform to the next level. And in that too, that it's tough to do that. Like it is difficult to do that, the first leaping off of the edge, but then the rewards in the long run. So for anyone watching this that is on that edge, wondering if you should really follow that whisper, what I call, that soul or that soulful whisper within you that says, take the leap and go for it, do. Because even though the initial leap off is scary, thank you for those hearts. I see them. I love those. I don't know if you can see those, Tanis, but we're getting all kinds of love. I love those little hearts. But I really do feel like go for it, because what the reward is in the long run is extraordinary. Because for me too, I was in this profession of public relations and agency work. And then, if you had asked me if I would have homeschooled my children, I would have told you were off your nut. Like I never thought I would. And then Todd and I having our children, I felt this responsibility. And just like you said, Tanis, I didn't want to leave them. I ached. I thought, if I'm going to have children, I want to be with them. Why would I go out into the world and inspire everybody else in inner leadership and development and soulful leadership from, working from the inside out? Why would I do that for everybody else and then barely have enough energy to give to my children? And so that actually birthed me homeschooling and then starting my own business. And what we call the Mad Hero Project for 15 years with the boys was about involving them in my business, and you too being able to involve your kids. So, anyone that's watching this, if you're on that edge, follow that voice within and go for it, because even though it might be scary, if you invest in the values that what's really calling you, then you have this ability to live this rich and soulful life that is so much more important than just the financial benefit. And everybody thought I was crazy to leave my career at an agency in public relations when I was climbing the ladder and had fabulous success. And I'm sure people thought you were crazy too.
You know what's interesting to me, because one of
Thank
the
you for the
biggest,
love.
one of the most difficult things for many people about starting a business like Arbonne is that there are some negative stereotypes, and there is a loss of status that is involved.
Yeah.
And you can imagine from being a physician. So I think that's also one of the things I realized, that one of my values was not status. So and I've known other people that are physicians that are miserable, but they always order their. One of my friends heard me making a restaurant reservation. She said, "What? You don't say this is Dr. Gaitens?" So I wasn't taking advantage of my status enough, but
love that about you.
But I think that, and it really was, family was a priority. And it was a family move. My 2 older daughters, especially my 13-year-old at the time, going on 14, everyone came together. They helped me so much. And by 5 months later, when I went back to work part-time, my teen daughters were looking after their little sister each one day a week. And as I was, it was a family affair.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that was I was living on the other side of the continent. And from my family, the other side of the border and the other side of the continent, my dad was having cardiac problems. And as a physician, I was able to get back once or twice a year for a week. But what the flexibility of time and location allowed me to, because I had gone on, by the time my son was born, I went on an indefinite maternity leave. But it allowed me to fly back to Vancouver from Philadelphia as a physician in the family, to be there with my dad, to make sure he was, hospitalized when I knew he needed to be, for my kids to spend time with him. And,
Yes.
Yes, again, that's time that I will never regret.
No.
And being able to do what I was able to do then, and so
Absolutely.
many other examples like that. As well as personally, and we'll probably come to this, but personally being able to live a healthy lifestyle myself.
Absolutely. And I do, I so admire that. It really did open up. I know in opening my own business and starting my own business, as you say, completely scary. Just the uncertainty of it and Todd and I trading off to try to do, but it allowed me to really, that's how I was able to see my mom and dad through end of life. That because I chose those elements and I forget the name of the actor because I didn't watch the show that he was on, but I saw a video and I think his name is Alex. But he is a man that just passed away this last week. And I caught the video, just he had ALS and he was doing this video about living in the present
Mhm.
moment. And I
Yes,
can't remember his name.
McSteamy.
Yes, yes, I can't remember his
I
name.
don't know
I love
his
that we
full name,
remember
but
him as McSteamy
yeah.
though. But yeah, he did this video about being in the present moment and the choices that you and I have both made. And I know a lot of you that would be catching this. And I see the Soul Shine Mystic out there. She's a gal that I'm going to be interviewing in the next few weeks as well, too, or the next few months as well. Thank you for joining us, live, everybody. It's so great. And those of you that are watching the recording, I hope you're really finding some deep value in what Dr. Tanis is sharing. And so I do find that those choices made for the people that we really love, those are never regrets. And our kids too had to make sacrifices because we took a financial hit, pulling back from being in that traditional business, and our kids were a part of it. And I don't know about you, Tanis, but I really felt and kind of my calling was I wanted to show my children that if you do what you love, then the money will flow. That you will have abundance if you follow your heart and you listen to that voice within, the money will come. And every stage of this, our boys have been, and our boys, and I know your children, but
Mhm.
they're in it with us. They're watching, they're paying attention. And I feel really peaceful with the fact that we're examples for following your heart, following your values, putting your values first, and now watching our children. I know you're watching yours and we're watching ours choose those values and find their way in the world and find what they love instead of just what they think they should do and what the world calls them to do. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes, I do, and I
So
think
good.
these big leaps,
Yeah.
I also think of it from the perspective that if you have a big enough why, the leap into something scary, is so much easier, and for me, in that example, I had my two teen daughters, but I literally had my newborn there in
Mhm.
in a, um in a little swing sitting beside me, and when I was afraid to do things because I was very introverted back then
Yeah.
and afraid to make phone calls, and we didn't have smartphones, and I
No,
would just literally could look at her and say, "This is my reason why, and I can do hard things, for the people that
absolutely.
I love, and I can grow," because it's, silly to be a 40-year-old who's afraid to make phone calls.
No. And especially when at like 40, we're constantly evolving. And I love, in my coaching business with having the absolute pleasure of working with a client like you. I love that people are constantly evolving. This values thing that we're talking about today, we're going to move into the personal element of things. But these values and this work that we do in relation to values never ends. And it's funny because, you got the coaching manual and my clients all get a coaching manual. It's something that you can look back on for the rest of time at every season and stage of life to say, where am I at now? Let's do a little check in. Is everything that I'm doing in these different areas of life, are they aligned with my actions? If so, yay. If not, what change do I need to make? And I'll just do, a little play on that this whole values element of what we've been doing is moving to an interactive workshop that's happening next Saturday. On Saturday, February 28th, and Tanis is going to be there. For me, this whole thing of the Soulful Way newsletter that I've been building on Substack, the SoulFull Sessions, these interviews, it's all guiding us towards community. It's all guiding us to being in a room. Tanis and I love talking at you, but we would love to talk with you. So come next Saturday and we want to dive in with you so that we can talk with you because these are conversations we need to have and being together to say, what stage am I at now? What values am I living? Where am I kind of out of alignment? And how do I realign that? So now on that note, I want you to talk about the glow life and what you do to grow and glow and give, and how you live that daily. What are some of your practices, and how do you show up and walk your talk so that, because you are authentically inspiring, which means that you're doing what you say you're doing. So tell us a little bit about your routine, your flow, and how do you live out glow life in your own way?
Right. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for leading me through like the values action alignment, in our coaching, and that's made such a difference. I think that work, that inner work, but also being in dialogue is important. And
Absolutely.
I love your workshop because one of the other things that I became so aware of initially through my Arbonne business was the importance of
Yeah,
community. I was working as a
absolutely.
child psychiatrist in an isolated kind of way, and then to enter into becoming part of community with others who are aligned in values, right? Who
Absolutely.
want to uplift, to encourage, to grow, to transform. And
Absolutely.
then what happens? So I think at a workshop like what you're talking about, you get that compound effect of being in
Really.
community with others
Yes.
that are a part of that process. So that sounds absolutely
Absolutely.
amazing.
Can't
And
wait.
for for myself, in terms of my daily practices, I have I have I have for myself come up with what I call my daily glow, and it's my morning glow and my evening glow, and it's a process that I take myself through every day, and it relates to especially so in the morning, starting in a very intentional way, and starting with gratitude. And so this comes again from Dr. Ahmed Sood way back. I learned to bookend my day in gratitude. And what I also learned was that even in the darkest times, that we can still have gratitude. And uh,
Absolutely.
I had known that in a theoretical way from my psychiatry background, but to be able to practice that, and to not
Mm,
and just to make those first thoughts of gratitude
absolutely.
intentional, and I think of three things that I'm grateful for before my feet hit the floor, and then also to guide myself with some questions around how I am going to um, how I'm going to seize this day, how I'm going to lead with love, and how I'm going to lead myself with love, how I'm going to reach up with love to my family, to my team, um, to and then the other thing is levity, because I really believe that levity is so important. We can get so serious and take ourselves so seriously. And in my business, I like to say I love to have fun with my business. I take the business seriously, but not myself
Yeah.
seriously. So I actually think about how am I gonna have levity or laughter or fun in this day with my business, with my family, with my partner, and with myself? And and
Absolutely.
and then the next thing that I think about is, um, challenges. So my O in Glow is about turning obstacles into opportunities. So I
Beautiful.
think about any obstacles that I could see. Could be how I'm feeling, could be actual what my schedule's gonna be like, or other big things that are going on. How can I turn them into opportunities? And I
Absolutely.
think a lot about how we lead life, also the questions, like asking good questions can lead to a good
Yeah.
life. So thinking about the opportunity, and that's something that it was a really transformational experience for me, to be able to think about, and then at a certain point, all obstacles become opportunities, right? And that idea that the those stones of challenges can either be they can be a wall blocking you, or they could be your stepping stones. So,
Absolutely.
and even if the only opportunity that I can see is the opportunity to practice emotional regulation.
Yeah, exactly.
And then lastly, that I think about, the I think about the wow story that I'm writing for my life, and I think about that as myself. And I know a lot of people talk about being the main actor in your life or actress,
Mm,
but I also think it's important for us to be a supporting actor or actress to other people. And I think
absolutely.
about, who am I going to help today, and who am I becoming today, and then that's all a part of my meditation practice also.
Mhm.
So I think about that a little bit before, and then spending time in meditation, current s- s- spending getting outside early in the day, the importance of that 20 minutes of
Yeah.
outside light, and what that does. emotionally, for our gut health,
Absolutely.
the health benefits of walking. My current favorite is to walk to the beach. I get the walking, I get the outdoor light, I get the bird song, I get the pink noise of
Right.
the ocean. And if I can make it work, I love to meditate by the ocean because it is
Mhm.
so easy, so much easier. And then
Yes,
let things float up to
it's a
me.
great forefront. Yeah,
And
great back.
and let things may float up to me from those questions that I've positioned earlier. And also the importance of movement, and also, and strength training. My strength training is body resistance training. I have a little workout that I do as well. And yeah, and then a checklist I go through, and then I close the day circling back to really be aware of what I was grateful for from the day, what my wins were in the day, how did I show leadership, what steps did I take towards my goals, and how could I improve my leadership. But I think that being aware of the wins
Yeah.
is so important.
Our yes moments, as we call them, or I do,
Yeah,
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 as we call
yes.
them through our work,
Or
those
they
yes
pass you
moments.
by, and
Yeah,
they can pass you by because you don't know to look for them, or if you're
yeah,
a high achiever, they pass you by because you achieved something and
absolutely.
you're immediately thinking about the next thing. And I
Absolutely.
think, one of the values in the Dr. Amit Sud um, mentioned was actually Saturdays are for celebration. And I used to do that with my kids, and this was very much a kid thing. But think about, what are we celebrating today together? But I think personal celebrations are really important, and you can have that at the end
Mhm.
of every day.
Absolutely. And you and I, we've done lots of work in the last year just about deepening that meditation. And as we say, we're constantly evolving. There's lots of things that we're doing. And then the check in every week of, that accountability piece of, did you meditate? How are your routines going? Are you listening to that voice within? Where is that guiding you in your business? Where is that guiding you, in your everyday practice? How is that guiding us in how we are as parents, as we are as partners? Right? It's that constant check in is so important because that keeps us grounded constantly. And that, listening to that voice within, which is all that tapping, right? Writing out in your journal about focusing in on the meditation, making sure you're walking and listening to that voice within you. And then that visualizing of what's next and where am I going next? And how do I visualize the next element in my business or the next element in my relationship with my child or with my community? And it's just those routines are everything because, you've read my book, Just One Soulful Thing. So it's that just this of being present in the moment and then just one soulful thing at a time. Every one of those little practices and rituals that allows us to remain tapped in all the time is just so important. And you do that at a miraculous flow. So I love that about you,
Well,
Tan.
I'm glad you mentioned visualization because I left that out. That is a part. And I want to just say, because I worked on breathing or breath work, whatever you'd like to call it, was my first kind of my entree, like for several, I don't know, maybe three years or so, was probably the closest I got to meditation. Now, in terms of thinking about health and medicine, I mean, breathing alone, there is so much health there and so much that can transform health on every
Absolutely.
level. But that was my entree. And then guided meditations. If there's anyone else who's like, how do guided meditations I loved, but
Get you in
to
the
step
door.
out of the guided meditations, I want to thank Jennifer because your emptying meditation really was my stepping stone into being able to go deeper into meditation and to
Oh,
access that and practice it. And I want to just encourage everyone because I talk with my kids about this with the breathing, like because of practicing it every day when I need it, as in at the dentist or I'm
yeah.
sitting there waiting with no phone and no nothing for surgery, for example. Having anything we practiced and have a habit of, we can then access. And that's the same thing with the meditation. So now I was able to access my meditation, which I hadn't had a chance to do yesterday while we were driving because I was in the backseat of the car, because it could be anywhere now.
It really can. And it's like a muscle going to the gym or, doing
Yes.
your resistance training at home or your little routines. It's once we cultivate that deeper practice and we're consistent with it, then we can access it in a heartbeat. And it's been beautiful to go through that. And for those of you that are either just joining us or watching the recording, so next Saturday, the 28th, we are going to do that emptying meditation. And so we're going to
Ooh.
teach you that meditation. So in the book, there's a number of different ones like the bliss bubble, and then there's the fill to flowing. So there are meditations, but I walk you through the them in the Just One Soulful Thing book so that you can go through on your own. And you and I did it guided at first, and then you just dove right in. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
We do these things in our lives. I know you do too through Glow Life. We do these things in our lives because we really hope that it touches someone, that it meets you right where you need it at the moment at which you need it. And I'm just so grateful to work with you. And I'm grateful that it's rippling out through the work that you do. And it's just beautiful to have this kind of conversation. Is different for us. So it's really cool
This
to have
is,
this.
yeah. And, and I think
Love it.
it's through the meditation, what I thought of this on a cognitive level before about being that ripple effect, the energy that we are emitting, working on being at a higher vibration level, but through meditation, really being able to be aware of not being a receiver and a transmitter, and wanting to have that positive ripple effect
Yeah.
of health, and for hope and for joy and transformation in the world.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, just to mention how that flows out into community. So you and I were working together in a coaching capacity. We knew each other in our communities and through our children. That's how we met. It's through our sons at
Mhm,
the
mhm.
graduation party for my oldest son and your son. Um, but I love that at Christmas, we did the Soulful Gift Bag campaign, and you and your husband, Ovi, were like on it like that and right in and said, how can we help? And we lined this. I'm looking out into our dining room, and we lined up all the bags, and we actually worked with the Buy Nothing in our community, and we gathered all the presents, and then we put together those bags. And it was such a heartfelt, beautiful way of coming together and taking our professional to the personal and then rippling that out into the community, because I've missed that in my own profession, because I can get quite busy, as everybody can, with the things that you're building and you're contributing in different ways. But when the kids were small, we did the Mad Hero Project. We were constantly running, community events and giving back, because we had that time and that energy in our homeschool experience to be able to do that. And so this campaign, this Christmas, I put it out there quickly, and you and Ovi and just our beautiful friends just showed up, and made us all feel so really great, didn't it, Tanis? It was so
Yeah,
good.
thanks for that
So
opportunity.
absolutely, we're
I've
going to do it
done
again and again.
I loved it. I've done, I have done giving back campaigns with
Yeah, of
my with
course.
my with my Arbonne team in the past,
Yeah.
and I love it when someone like you spearheads and creates that opportunity. And I discovered talents that
Couldn't have
I
done it
didn't
without
know
all of
for
you.
Ovi's decisiveness and what should go in what bag and everything. It was like
It
a
was
hidden talent that he had that we didn't
It
know
was so
about.
great. And he was just like organizing it all. And it was amazing how, and that too, when you come together in community, because I really wanted that. It's just like doing the workshop next Saturday. And I know it's online, and I wish that I could continue to do. I've always done workshops in person. It's probably one of my first online workshops, because I've done little gatherings, but next Saturday, this is the momentum building. We're going to do a workshop every single month. And on this Saturday, it's going to be free, but it's actually a test. So we're just bringing in just 20 people maximum. So we're almost full. So if you're watching this and you want to join, send a note to me. If not, we'll be doing one again in March, but it will be through the paid subscription on Substack. So we're only going to be charging $13 a month for the workshop every month, which is very different than my world and what you charge in a physical space. I love that. And I'm grateful that we can do that. And we want to build more and more of that every month with a different theme, bringing in different people to interview, and then engaging at the end of the month and being able to at least meet in that Zoom and that online space, seeing face to face. But then I encourage every one of us, because Tanis and I are going to be doing more here in our community, but take that and go out into the world, because that Christmas campaign was just, hey, I'd like to do something, and said to our two boys and my husband, I really want to do something. It was actually sparked at Thanksgiving when my son came in from outside, and he had found a man who was homeless that was outside. He was a young man, and he came in and he said, Mom, it's Thanksgiving and there's a man who's out there who's really chilly. He said, is there a way we could pull things together? And I said, absolutely. And we pulled together a big dinner for him, and we pulled together an extra coat, and we went outside. And when we came back inside from having a lovely conversation with him, actually, he was from my hometown in Ontario, this small town, and he was actually from my hometown, and he was heading through. And so we got him on his way. But that sparked when our son came back inside. He said, Mom, we need to do something at Christmas. And then we just put it out there. But people like you, Tanis, and Ovi, and our other community members, everybody pulled together, because I never could have done it on my own. And so I encourage you, you don't have to wait for holidays and Christmas, but I really feel like that needs to be top of mind. What are the little things that we can do in our community that really display not only the values that we're cultivating within ourselves personally, but also putting that out, into our businesses, but then out into community because there's so many people that need us right now. And whether that's a kind word online or whether that's showing up, we have a little gift, we have a little cupboard in our town where we just drop off food every once in a while. Whatever that is, we need to find those ways, don't we, Tanis, to just take this out into the world, not just with our teams, but with our communities as well, too. Hey.
I think that's so true, Jennifer. And I think in this time where, there's a lot to deal with that's going on, and there's so much change, a lot of division, and it can feel paralyzing. And sometimes some people might even feel despair or hopelessness about being able to create change as a person. And I think something that I attach myself to, I was just thinking about my Arbonne team. Actually, I've changed the name, but used to call them, our team name used to be Starfishers. And that was named after the starfish story.
Yes. I
The
tell that in my
starfish.
workshops. I love how many connections.
Yes, the starfish
Yes.
story. So I won't tell the
Go
whole
ahead,
story
tell
now,
it. No,
but
tell it. Tell it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So basically, there was a man who was walking on a beach and saw all these starfish that were exposed on the sand and starting to change color, which signifies they're starting to die. And there's a little girl who's throwing starfish back into the water. And he says to her, what are you doing? There's thousands, if not 100,000 starfish here. You can't possibly make a difference. And she threw one more back into the ocean and she said, I just made a difference to that one.
Sure made a difference to that one.
So you
I
know what?
love
I
that.
think when we remind ourselves that small actions that we take, small kindnesses, and that could be a smile. Like I tell my kids, a smile, a hello and a smile could be something that made a huge difference to a person in a day. We never know what anyone else is going through. We all
Absolutely.
have challenges, but the little things that we could do, that if we made a difference for one person, then that is
Absolutely.
significant.
And it's so funny. And I know all of you watching this, because if you found us here, there's a reason. But I love that when you energetically have that alignment, then you meet other people that have that alignment. And so when you talk, Tanis, I feel like I'm hearing a part of my soul. Like it's really beautiful how you feel that connection. And then the serendipity that comes from that is next month, our theme is actually community. It's about soulful community, which are all those little kindnesses. So we're going to be talking lots more about that. And then the workshop at the end of next month, we're actually going to do a physical one and we're going to do one online that is about creating things, making things in community, simple little signs, messages. We call them hero letters to ourselves and our family members. And we're going to be doing things like that in order to be able to ripple that out into the community. So you and I have to talk about that one, Tanis.
Oh yeah. Wow. That sounds great.
Awesome. And so
I'm excited.
I want to kind of go to the broader vision, and I want to get your thoughts on what value do you believe is most needed in our culture right now? And maybe start with that one. What do you think? What do you think is missing, or what do we need to cultivate in order to be able to kind of help people along at this time in our world, in our time and space and history?
I have a little bit of a hard time narrowing it down, but I think
Yeah.
that thinking about community and thinking
Yeah.
about connection. So
Yeah.
I think connection is so important, and we know from the research, coming back to research, that we now know that being lonely, that having few or no friends, is as much of a risk factor for your death as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And we used to say, when Luca was little, and he heard I told him a little bit about sitting and how sitting is such a risk factor.
Yeah.
And I read something out to him. He's like in grade 3 and didn't like to sit to do his homework. And in Pennsylvania, there was a lot of homework. So when I told him that, he said, okay, then mom, then school is, school's bad for my health because I have to sit.
Our kids homeschooled and did round-offs, so they would definitely be right on board with that.
But lonely, so connection, and in this online age, and I think connection, I was thinking about this. I was reading a little bit this morning about even the positive benefits of hearing bird song, but our brains are wired for connection. And that's one of the theories about why it's so good, because even connecting with nature, and we haven't talked about, I'm really passionate about the benefits of being around trees, forest bathing, Shinrin, Yoku,
Absolutely.
um, green and blue space, all of those kinds of things. So I think of nature as a value,
Absolutely.
and around where we
Absolutely.
live, we're seeing the green space disappear, and I appreciate wherever it is. So
Yeah.
I think I'm thinking about green space. I'm thinking about connection with each other,
Yeah.
connection with nature, and then
Absolutely.
and building community. I think is so essential. I think
Absolutely.
that resilience
Mhm.
is a really important value. And I heard Trevor Noah say something about the word about kindness, and that the root is actually from kindred
Yeah.
or kin, and thinking
Yeah.
about humankind. So that's something
Yeah.
else. Thinking about humankind
Wonderful.
and being connecting ourselves to humankind as a whole, rather than all the subdivisions. Um,
Absolutely.
I think that's a
Yeah.
value that could help the world right now.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna add one on to that because it's funny, and you and I do this all the time in our coaching flow, is that you kind of go with whatever comes in the download. And so instantly when you started to talk, I thought of the value of discernment. And that in our world right now, so much is coming at us, and there's so many options of what we would do with our time and where we would put our attentions and how we would focus. I think that so much in tandem with that community and that kindness is the discernment of what we allow into our minds, of what we allow as far as what we're scrolling through, what we're listening to, and then discerning where our time is best spent and spending it in things that we value, in time in nature, or that's connecting with someone that we love. So I think so much of our world now, there's so many options and so much intensity that that discernment piece goes hand in hand with that community and that kindness. Where what are we allowing into our minds and our hearts and our souls, and what are we putting out, and where are we spending our time, and who are we spending it who are we spending our time with, and how are we finding the balance in our own lives that we're getting enough sleep, that we're eating the right foods. And then we're going out and we're having lots of fun and we're laughing and we're doing that 80-20 rule of 80% of the things that are super healthy for me and 20% we're just fun and going out for, ice cream. Whatever that is, right? So yeah, just really, I love these conversations. And I'm so, our tagline is essential conversations for curious people. And part of the reason we started, I started the Soulful Way newsletter, and then I started the Soulful Sessions, and now Todd and I are doing them together, and we kind of balance them between that and interviewing. The whole reason for this is that I think we need more of this in our world. We need to have these conversations more and more, because there are a lot of conversations that are going on out there that we are bombarded with. A lot of them are truth speaking, which is absolutely essential. But then we need to figure out and find out and discuss and discover what we can do about it. Because as you were saying, Tanis, we can feel hopeless and we can feel exhausted by it all. And so we want to put a little spark and a ripple. So I hope that those of you that are watching, if you're just popping in now or you're just seeing the recording, make sure you go back and you listen to all the tips and rituals and practices that Tanis was talking about, because they're just so valuable in what we do every day. And so the last question I have for you is, what does flourishing look like? So not just for individuals, but for communities. So how do we flourish? In that whole grow, glow, and give. What is that why that mantra, and what does that mean to our flourishing? So maybe just a last thought on that you'll leave with people, about what that's all about. What does flourishing look like for you?
Yeah, so flourishing from the personal to the community aspect. Yeah, so I think that flourishing looks like when people can grow into the best versions of themselves, that
Yeah.
that evolution, and then experience that glow, that glow of good health, that glow of happiness, that glow of holistic enrichment on every level, in relationships, in connectedness, in individual achievement. in love and so much more. And, give, I think that sometimes, like, I think there's a lot of value in the self, in being reminded of self-care. But I think sometimes we can stay in self-care and we forget about altruism. So the give part, I think, is so important. Every day, what can I give? And it could be so simple, or it could be profound. It could be starting an initiative like Jennifer just described at Christmas, right? But
Yeah,
what can I give? And what kind of legacy am I leaving? And that's another form of our giving.
absolutely.
Perhaps, and for you, you have your first book of many as a legacy. Um, but yeah, so
And many
that's
more to come, and you'll be having more too. For those of you that don't know, Todd and I have a publishing company called Mad Hero Productions, Mad Hero Publishing, and so Tanis is going to be working on a book too. So we can't wait for that. Oh, you have so many things to share. We all have these
so
stories.
excited, and the
Put out it.
accountability is so important. I'm really grateful for it.
It's but you know what? I will say I know you feel the same way. I feel so lucky to have the job that I do. And that it was so worth all the effort and the energy that went in to build what we're building and what we're doing, because we get to have conversations and we get to have fun like this. And I know you feel that about your Arbonne business with your team and all the amazing things you're making happen for people from the inside out, glowing from the inside out. And certainly spending today with you has made me feel all glowy on the inside and the outside. So I'm so grateful, Tanis.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, and I'm really grateful for the
Beautiful.
opportunity, Jennifer. It's been a really lovely conversation,
Amazing. Amazing.
and
The first of many on this live platform, I have a feeling.
yeah.
And thank you. I saw the bathrobe, our robes guy come in at the end. Welcome. If you're just catching this at the end, please do catch the recording, because there were lots of juicy bits that Dr. Tanis offered in there. And we're just so grateful that you took your time on your Sunday. And if those of you that were up for the hockey game, we're amazed even more by the fact you showed up live. Thank you so much. And those of you that are watching the recording, we're just thrilled that you got this information. So grateful for you, Tanis, personally and professionally. It's just a gift to know you. It's a gift to know your family. Absolutely, darling.
Aw.
Ah,
Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. It
yes,
has
sweetheart.
been a pleasure, and you are certainly a gift in my life, and I look forward to many more interactions.
Many more moments. Just a reminder. Oh, and Alex said, thank you, Jennifer and Tanis. So wonderful you're here, Alex. That was another serendipitous connection. We met Alex buying Nathaniel, our son's electric guitar.
Mm.
So it's so cute how, and now we're engaged in many things now. And so it's beautiful. Those serendipitous, beautiful community connections that you never know where they're going to come from when you just put the love out there.
I love
And
that.
so next week, please know on Saturday, we won't be having a Sunday Soulful session next week. It will be true. That's true from now on. The last weekend of every month, we'll be not doing the Soulful session on Sunday, but on Saturday, we'll be doing a workshop. So we only have a few spots left, but this one is free because we're really wanting to gather some kindred souls. So I know that a couple of you that are on here today, I think 3 of you on here today are actually a part of the workshop next week. And Tanis and I will both be there, as well as my husband, Todd. And so it's an opportunity for us to come together and dive deeper into this topic that we've been sharing all month long. But in addition, I'm really looking for your feedback on the flow of the workshop, how it works online. So if you would like to be a part of what we're now launching as the SoulFull Collective, we would love you to be a part. So please reach out to me. The SoulFull Collective is also going to kind of flow forward we'll be doing a special edition of the Soulful Way newsletter every month. We'll be featuring 3 writers from Substack that is on the topic of the month. We've already got it all set, and it's going to be Soulful Collective newsletter will be out next week with those of you that are contributing. If you'd like to be a contributor for that, please let me know. We'll also be featuring little notes and inspiring messages. We just want to bring this community together, and we want to help everybody grow and glow and give, just like Tanis talks about in her beautiful glow life wording. So lots of love, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Wishing you the most extraordinary, soulful, glow, grow, give kind of day you can imagine. So thanks for joining us. Thanks, Tanis.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone, and I just want to urge you all to glow life.
Absolutely. On that, have a wonderful day, everybody. Lots of love. Mwah. Until next time. Thanks for all the lovey hearts. We see them and we love them. Reach out with any messages. We always answer them too. We'd love to hear from you. Take care, everybody. Bye, Tanis. Have a
Bye-bye.
beautiful
Take
day, love.
care.
Bye.